All right, hello, welcome everybody. Welcome on in. Let people get comfortable as we start ourselves off today. Welcome. Okay, well, good morning, friends from around the state. I want to welcome you back. It's our 45th meeting of the Local Energy Resources Network. I see folks continuing to come on in. Welcome in. Welcome. Thank you, folks, for being on camera. It makes me feel less lonesome. Love to see your faces. All right. Hi, everybody. So I'm Angie Hacker. I'm the statewide best practices coordinator with the California Climate and Energy Collaborative, joined today by Rochelle from the SEEK team. You can always contact her if you have any technical issues. I know it's a really rainy day out here in California, I think for about all of us, and you may rather be snuggling and getting cozy by a fire or something, but we still appreciate you coming back over and over again for these meetings and helping us all keep each other abreast of the resources that we need to move forward on our energy and climate work. Just want to encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat, because I like to use these meetings as an opportunity for us all to get to know each other a little bit better. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so as always, these meetings are designed to help you access opportunities that can help all of us keep advancing your energy and climate goals. As we have for the last few months, sometimes we like to bring your attention to some of the underlying policy movements that can impact your energy and climate funding prospects. So first, we'll do what we normally do today. We're going to run through timely opportunities. We have 3 short spotlights from Strategic Growth Council, CARB, and then our friends over at the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative are here to talk a little bit about some SCHIP updates that might appeal to you. Then our featured speaker of the day is going to help us all demystify what shook out from California's most recent legislative session, and in particular, kind of pointing out what happened on energy and climate, including budget investments. And at the end, we'll have our bonus breakout. If you're available to join us afternoon, we kind of go more informal, and that's an opportunity for you to raise announcements or other topics you might like to discuss for about 15 minutes. So that's the plan for today. For folks still streaming in, please do introduce yourself over chat, and we're going to dive in to our opportunity roundtable. This is the monthly hyperlinked, very messy cheat sheet that you will get afterwards, so don't stress about taking notes. And you're gonna see some links in the chat as we go along. So usually we try to focus on the things that we haven't talked about before, so the things that are highlighted are things we want to get your attention on, mainly funding opportunities, but some other items as well. So as we go along, if you're familiar with other policy updates or programs, input opportunities, we like to help each other out here, kind of crowdsource anything that we may have missed. Please drop that in the chat as well. So as you all know, policy is key to driving investments and what eventually becomes a funding opportunity. We are going to cover, it's in blue over there on the left, because we're going to cover legislative updates, like I said, with our featured speaker in a bit. You all are also aware a lot of happening on the federal government side, including the shutdown that's been in effect for a couple of weeks, and some related matters when it comes to clean energy. We are hearing about some further cancellations of DOE clean energy projects, about $7.5 billion in projects. What we're hearing now is potentially more cuts to the tune of up to $15 billion in additional cuts to basically cancellations of projects. An article I looked at just today said 90 combined from those 2 sets of cuts, we might be looking at 93 project cancellations in California worth $3.5 billion. I would be really interested between that and the tax credits. I know that I am getting a frontline view of a lot of terrible effects on clean energy projects, and I'm seeing some of them now not be able to pencil. I'm interested in if any of you are being affected by these cuts, the cancellations or the tax credits. Just, you don't have to share too much, but if you have projects that are being affected, let us know. I think it's still decent news to hear that there was an executive order we talked about last month out of the governor's office, trying to sort of compensate for some of those hardships on clean energy projects with an energy working group and a strike team. Okay, but let's talk about funding opportunities. One more piece of maybe not the best news, but you may have heard that EPA has terminated California's award for the Solar for All program. That was a pretty large, substantial funding source. There's a formal announcement that will be linked here in the chat. CEC let us know that it has been formally terminated. I do not have information, maybe any of you do, about whether or not there's going to be efforts to try to bring that back. But let's move on. So the CEC does have an opportunity through its EPIC program called the Distributed Resources for Innovative Vehicle Energization Strategies. That one is, let's see, it's due November 21st. Grants are between $2 million and $4.5 million for a total of $12 million available. It's to fund technology demonstration and deployment projects that increase the value proposition of distributed energy resources to customers and the grid. It's trying to expedite energization timelines, reduce ratepayer costs, and target technical, regulatory, and operational barriers associated with commercial electric vehicle charging infrastructure paired with behind-the-meter microgrids. So this is more of an R&D. It's a large one. Obviously, they're not making many awards, but it is open to all public and private entities. And I'm raising it partially because you might be interested in a demonstration project, but I also want you to hear that there's some movement here. I know this has been an area of concern for many of you that have tried to do to grid tie some of your EV infrastructure and have had some struggles. But I think they're trying to find ways to navigate it. Okay, so I also wanted to mention a couple of upcoming funding opportunities we haven't really discussed yet, so they're kind of forthcoming. One is from CARB. It's a Planning and Capacity Building Project grant. The applications are not open yet, but they are supposed to open soon. We will keep you posted. They're intended to increase transportation equity and disadvantage in low-income communities by improving the local understanding of residents' transportation needs, helping develop organizational and community capacity building, and preparing communities to implement community-identified projects for transportation. So it's up to $500,000 each, and eligible entities include community-based organizations, local governments, and tribes that serve priority populations throughout California. You may have also heard that we have another round 2 of the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Program coming. It's pending. LCI, so the Governor's Office of Climate Innovation, Land Use and Climate Innovation, has already done a bunch of workshops on this as they develop their guidelines, but the goal of this fund or this granting program is to support local, regional, and tribal efforts to reduce the impacts of extreme heat. So we'll keep you posted on when this one becomes available as well. I have this next item here in blue, the CPC Self-Generation Improvement Program. It's on a rolling basis, but I know that some of you have hit some hiccups here on this program as the deadlines start to loom. We're going to have a speaker here in just a moment talking a little bit about some progress that has been made on trying to pursue extensions for certain projects, non-residential projects. So more to come on that. And we also have a speaker from CARB. Our friend Andrew Reyes is going to tell you a little bit more about a zero emission event coming up in Oakland. So I won't speak much about that. And then on input opportunities, quite a few. I'm going to just talk about a couple of them. Our friend Sarah from SGC is going to tell you more about the Transformative Climate Communities and Community Resilience Center program that's also being developed right now. They have done a great job of reworking to improve both of those guidelines to try to become more accessible. So you're going to hear more about that in just a moment. CARB is also, they just advertised a Cap and Invest program public workshop. So I wanted to make sure you all were aware of that. So that will be, CARB staff is going to provide an overview of recently signed legislation that provides direction on the Cap and Invest program we're going to talk about today, and discuss potential updates to the cap and trade regulation. So that's on October 29th. It's remote. I also wanted to, I forgot to mention CalREN, and there's going to be more information coming out about this. Has a workshop coming up. It's on Equitable Electrification Forum. That's on November 19th. And so you can join energy leaders and other stakeholders from across California to discuss the future discuss the future of electrification programs, strategies for reaching hard-to-reach communities, and the importance of equity and resilience in our energy system. So we invite you to join us for that. And then I think I have one last update here. Just wanted to get this in front of you that the California Energy Commission is also working on its first Building Energy Action Plan. It will be published in late 2025, they think, after it's done with its first draft review by the governor. So there will be a public workshop coming. We'll keep you posted on that. But the report will identify challenges and make recommendations to legislators, advocates, researchers, the Department of Energy, and other stakeholders about what's needed to move existing building energy efficiency and decarbonization forward in California. I know a lot of you will be interested in what that has to say and possibly providing some comment on that. Okay, that's the fire hose. If you have more and I missed anything, please drop it in the chat. Help each other out. We are each other's best bet here. Thanks for the clap. Oh, thanks. Okay, all right. So here we're going to move into our opportunity spotlights. Like I said, I have a few friends here to speak, and we're going to start off with Sarah Newsham from Strategic Growth Council. She's going to talk about transformative climate communities and the community resilience centers and some of the changes they've made to that program. So Sarah, you're amazing. I really appreciate what you've done with this program. Tell us more.
Thanks, Angie. Hi, everyone. As Angie said, I'm here to talk about the public comment period for the draft guidelines for two of our grant programs at SGC. Those are round 2 of the Community Resilience Centers program and round 6 of the Transformative Climate Communities program. And they're 2 programs with separate guidelines and separate applications, but we're coordinating closely to align our programs as much as possible. And I pasted a link in the chat that has all the information and links that you'll need if you want to get involved. So these are the 3 programs funded through the Climate Bond at SGC and at our partner organization LCI. Today I'll just be talking about the 2 on the left, TCC and CRC, but you may also be interested in the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Centers program, which Angie mentioned earlier. So both TCC and CRC are place-based community and economic development programs. TCC funds community-led development and infrastructure projects that achieve major environmental, health, and economic benefits in the California communities most impacted by pollution. And CRC funds specifically the development of neighborhood-level resilience hubs or community resilience centers alongside services and programs to improve local resilience. And we have a comparison chart for these 3 programs on our website to help you understand the similarities and differences and figure out which might be a good fit for you. Next slide, please. TCC anticipates receiving $100 million through the Climate Bond over 1 round, and CRC anticipates $55 million over 1 round. Next slide. And these funds will be split over multiple grant types. So TCC has planning, project development, and implementation grants, and CRC has planning and implementation grants. I'm not going to go into more detail on this slide now, but if you have questions, I'm happy to return to it. Next slide, please. So we released our draft guidelines for public comment at the end of September, and we're accepting public comment until January 2. We're expecting to release the final guidelines and the application in spring or summer of 2026. And then we'll have a 4 or 5 month application period and announce awards in the spring or summer of 2027. Sorry, the formatting got a little wonky on these slides. And these timelines are very tentative and subject to change, but this is what we're planning for and hoping for. Next slide, please. So lead applicants can be any of the organizations listed on this slide, and then groups who aren't on this list may also be able to serve as co-applicants in partnership with these organizations. This round, we are proposing adding funding goals and priority points for tribes, unincorporated communities, and some other groups. Next slide. Another significant proposed change that we'd love to receive public feedback on is the introduction of a funded pre-development phase for our implementation grants. So Once applicants are selected for an implementation grant award, they'll have up to 1 year to develop their shovel-ready project plans before they actually begin project implementation. And during that year, they'll have access to technical assistance and to a portion of their grant funding. Previously, most of this work happened during the application process or before executing the grant agreement and was largely unfunded. Next slide. So how can you weigh in? You can submit comments directly to us at any time before January 2 using a form on our website. If you'd like to hear an overview of all of the major changes and provide feedback to us live, we'll be hosting 4 virtual input sessions. The first one is this afternoon and is for all audiences. We'd love to see you there. We'll also be hosting one next week for tribes, then one for rural and or unincorporated communities, and then another one for all audiences later on in December. The dates are here and in the link I put in the chat, and you can register on our website. We're also planning to host small focus groups in December to dive into more specific topics. And so there's a form where you can express interest in attending one of those, and we'll reach out to you to follow up on that. There's also on our website some helpful summaries of the changes we're proposing so that you don't actually need to read the whole guidelines document in order to share your thoughts and provide feedback on what we're proposing. Next slide, please. So I can answer a couple questions right now or in the chat, and then please feel free to email us with any questions throughout the public comment period. We'd love to see you at some of our events and hear from you virtually. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. I really just do have to appreciate Sarah again because she really is listening to, they really are listening to communities, and including our Better Funding Report, and really has been a great partner in working on accessibility. I think if you go to one of these input sessions, you're going to hear there's some new features in this program guideline for the TCC program, like new project pre-development phase, that I think you'll find helpful. I see a question here hi Jody, you are asking about whether or not you can apply for both programs.
Yes, you can apply to both programs, and we're hoping to make that a little easier and have some more consistency in our questions and requirements where possible, but they are still separate programs with separate application and review processes. And yes, can we go back to the slide with the dollar amounts for each tier? That's the question. I think it's the next slide. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So more to look forward to here. This is related to our conversation we're going to have, right? The GGRF dollars and Prop 4 helping to make these programs continue. So we're happy to see it. I think those are our questions for you, Sarah. If you want to hang around, one more. Will these webinars be recorded for future reference? This one will, if that's what you're asking, but I think Sarah, yours will be as well, I imagine.
We're at least recording the first one this afternoon. I'm not sure if we'll be recording all of them or just that one, but we will record it and post it on YouTube and our website if you can't make it.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for being here, Sarah, and for that update. We'll be looking forward to seeing those funding opportunities. Yes.
It's Jody, and I can't let an opportunity go by. I also put in the chat earlier that I continue to believe that we are put into a very challenging situation. You started off by listing all of the federal funding that has vanished from California, and now there's a very limited amount of funding from the state that's trying to fill the gap. And we are once again being pushed into competitive situations where we are competing against one another, and we're being asked to track grant opportunities from multiple agencies. And it's exceedingly challenging for us. And I would, I'm just once again putting it out there. Can we have a conversation with whoever it needs to be about a different method where we have block grants that identify priorities and everyone is guaranteed some amount of funding? I understand people want to make big impacts, and I'm probably prejudicing myself in a negative way because I have so many industrial facilities in my county. I think I should get a lot more money than the rest of folks who don't have 4 refineries and 2 power plants. But this system is just really hard for us to navigate. It's hard to know where to put your attention when it's a very tenuous opportunity to receive funding, particularly if you don't have grant writing staff or you haven't done this before. So I know I'm going on about this, but I think that a lot of folks often agree with me when I make this point. And if you do, please say so now, because there's all these people from the state here, and this is our opportunity to weigh in a little bit. Thank you.
Thanks, Jody. Yes, totally agree with all of that. I will say the one I'd say most significant thing we're trying in this round to address what you've described, which is not block grants, but is at least significantly reducing the application requirements and moving most of those requirements to after you've gotten an award. This is specifically for implementation grants. We haven't made changes to the other grant types, but we didn't see a way around the competitive nature of it for these two programs in this round, but we're hoping that at least requiring each applicant to do significantly less work in order to apply will at least be a step in the right direction, but we're definitely open to suggestions of other things.
We're gonna give you some fairly pointed comments, but
you're welcome.
It will be in December, so thank you.
Sounds great.
Jody, thank you. You are in good company. Come to the SLEEK meeting this week. We'll talk about that at the end of this meeting, where we have an entire priority area and lots of information to share on funding access and trying to get bigger, bolder ideas to change how we deploy funding. Okay, everybody. I see one more hand up. Felicia, is that you? And then we're going to move to our next speaker.
Yeah, it was just a quick question, and I also put it in the chat. So there was one slide that showed 3 programs, but then the grants types and the funding amounts showed only 2 programs. So I was just wondering what's going on with EHCR.
Yeah, great question. So those are just the 3 programs that are being funded through the climate bond at our agency. TCC and CRC are on the exact same timeline and coordinating extremely closely. Extreme Heat we're also coordinating with, but not to the same degree. It won't be on the exact same timeline, so they're going through their own process. I just wanted to flag that there's a lot of overlap and similarities, and the folks who might be interested in those, so I encourage you to go check out their materials and processes, but I don't have any additional information on their funding right now.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks again, Sarah, for being here. We're going to move to our next speaker. And if you see my screen move, it's because my cat is moving my computer right now. All right. So we're going to move on to Andrew Reyes, who is here with CARB. He's one of our VIPs. He likes to come and provide updates a lot. And he's got an event coming up. So I'll leave it to you, Andrew.
Hey, thanks, Angie. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming out. CARB is hosting an exciting event, bringing together industry leaders, policymakers, fleet owners, OEMs, dealers, and the public to explore the latest advancements in zero-emission technology and transportation solutions. It'll be taking place on November 5th at the Oakland Coliseum. This will be a hands-on showcase where you can test drive zero-emission vehicles, transforming our industries. You'll also discover technical assistance and funding programs to support your zero-emission vehicle purchases. Previously, our ride and drives offered access to over 70 vehicles consisting of medium and heavy duty trucks, off-road equipment, school and transit buses, all in one place. It's a great opportunity to experience firsthand how zero-emission technology is transforming the transportation industry. We hope to see you there. I'm going to drop a link to the registration page and my email if you guys have any questions.
Thanks, Andrew, for always keeping us updated. They are a great resource when it comes to emerging advanced clean fleet mandates and resources and incentives. Okay, well, let's go. And if you have any questions for Andrew, he's going to hang around for a couple minutes. You can drop them in the chat. We are going to move to our last spotlight before we get into our featured speaker. And this is actually with Josh Simmons from Prosper Sustainably. He's my partner, but he has some interesting updates to share from the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative around SGIP, which many of you use, and some interest in deadline extensions. So I'm going to leave it up to you, Josh.
Thanks, Angie. So I'm Josh Simmons with the Southern California Tribal Chairman's Association, Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative, which includes 25 federally recognized tribes in Southern California. We've been working actually with LGSCC on a petition for modification for the self-generation incentive program for energy and storage incentives for non-residential disadvantaged community and tribal projects. We submitted a series of comments and petitions previously and have gotten some success in that there is a proposed decision that's actually proposing the extensions we're requesting, but there's it was an unexpected hook that if a site host accepts the extensions, that if their project includes solar and that project was on NEM2 or earlier, that project needs to move to net billing tariff. And our analysis of our project shows that the cash flow analysis shows that the loss of utility bill savings over time, which was the basis of making this investment proceed with the project, would essentially be more than lost. It's more, it's the size of the rebate and more for each of these. So right now we're trying to identify the other projects out there. We've identified 10 site hosts among tribes and disadvantaged communities, and 24 projects that have solar, including solar that's been installed years ago, that are essentially, probably 75 to 95 or more % done with their project, having spent all the money, and now are going to be subject to this requirement. So if you have an SGIP project that's, non-residential equity or equity resilience project, that you're seeking further extensions for these, and they involve solar, and that would be maybe affected by this, please reach out to me at jsimmons@prospersustainably.com. That's not exactly spelled correctly. We'd like to, hear about the projects that you're working on and better help elevate your voice and your projects to hopefully have this new requirement removed to ensure that the basis that these projects proceeded with, that they're invested in, continues to hold and ultimately aren't otherwise harmed by this decision.
All right. Thanks, Josh. Wouldn't you put your email address in the chat so folks can get to you? And if folks have questions, you can drop those in the chat as well. I know a lot of y'all are following SGIP, so you may have experienced. Just wanted to share there's some success here in terms of the engagement at the PUC, and part of that has to do with the PUC's Equity Engagement and Education grant that Tech received. So some positive successes coming out. Okay, next slide, please. All right, this is the meat of the day. Thanks for getting through those spotlights with us, everybody. I want to welcome Jeff Neal, been a legislative friend of mine, keeping me updated on a lot of things, including what's been going on with the recent legislative session and things that may be outcomes for our energy and climate work here at place-based energy and climate work. We're going to talk a little bit about the outcome of the budget and various energy and climate investments. So thank you for being here, Jeff. He's going to give us a rundown. Please put questions in the chat for Jeff as we go, and we'll get to those when he's done. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Angie. It's really been great working with you over the last few months on some of these issues, and appreciate the invitation. This is a great group, and I'm really pleased to see how much information you guys are presenting and sharing with each other about these topics. Like Angie said, I'm Jeff Neal. I'm a senior legislative representative here at Nielsen Merximer. Nielsen Merximer is a law and lobby firm. In addition to lobbying, especially for local government and healthcare issues, the firm does FPPC compliance and local ballot measures and Voting Rights Act and other legal issues for local agencies. We just started, I think, relevant to a lot of the agencies this group looks at. We just started some regulatory tracking and provide some free information about that if anybody wants to sign up, tracking regulatory issues. But on these issues, specifically, a lot happened right at the end of session. Frankly, there was only because of the year, because of the way the schedule worked out, there were only a few weeks for a lot of issues to get finalized, a lot of deals to come together. At one point, with just a couple of weeks of session left, to be honest, it looked like none of them were going to come together. Prop 4 allocation, after voters approved Prop 4 last November, It looked like the legislature wasn't going to allocate any of the funds, which would have been a real lost opportunity. It looked like the cap and invest, cap and trade greenhouse gas reduction fund deal was not going to come together. There were a lot of other things taking up the legislature and the administration's attention. See the redistricting issue that you guys all have ballots probably waiting for you at home or already returned. AI was a big issue. And then, of course, the response to a lot of federal issues, including HR 1, which is mostly having to do with the health and human service side, but obviously touches a lot of other issues as well. All those were taking up a lot of space. And it looked like these things were going to come together. And then lo and behold, not quite at the last minute, but in some cases just past the last minute, they did come together because the Constitution requires bills to be in their final form for at least 72 hours before a final vote. The legislature had to extend their session by one extra day. Everybody came to work on Saturday, and we were all very happy that it went down that way, so that we could work on a weekend. The legislature was also very happy about it. So they did extend their session by a day, which meant that the governor also got an extra day to sign and veto bills, because in odd years like this, the governor gets 30 days from when session goes to interim recess to make those actions. So he had through yesterday instead of through Sunday this year, and took full advantage of that time. I think we can go to the next slide. Let's start with Prop 4. This is $10 billion that the voters approved for resources. On the left side of the slide, there are all the dollar amounts and categories that are in Prop 4. A total $10 billion. A lot of it is for water projects, a lot for wildfire and forest resilience, and a fair amount for climate resilience and resource issues, whether some of it for coastal specifically, some of it for biodiversity or nature-based solutions, clean air programs. A lot of that money so far is going to offshore wind, extreme heat response, a fair amount of money for new parks or creating outdoor recreation opportunities for disadvantaged communities. And then some ag money as well. And in the end, they actually allocated more than I think any of the prior proposals had said. I think the governor proposed allocating between $2 and $2.5 billion. And in the end, they allocated almost a full third of Prop 4, about $3.28 billion. There is a lot in there. We have a detailed spreadsheet that lists all of the allocations that were made through the budget this year. It is the full listing is about 175 individual lines. I think the ones that are not projects, but a fair number of the money goes to specific projects. Not too much of it, not maybe as much as some people advertised, but there's still about, depending on how you count, maybe $2 to $2.5 billion that will be available for across all of these broad buckets of funding. And there's about 100 individual line items of potential funding opportunities. Listed a few of the ones here on the slide that are either particularly large or particularly relevant to this group. Over $200 million for power plant site certification and transmission line corridor designations. A lot of money for parks going out in this first year. Fair amount of money for microgrids or distributed energy systems that are either non-residential or aggregated residential distributed energy systems. Coastal resilience, $46 million for urban greening, fairly substantial amounts of money for a number of these things. And I could have made slide after slide of this. Like I said, there are over 100 items, and we're happy to share the spreadsheet with folks if you want. Hannah Euler in our office has done a lot of work putting that together. You can contact me about that. A lot of money through CAL FIRE for, vegetation management, issues like that of course have a lot of potential to reduce greenhouse gas releases. A lot of money through the Department of Food and Ag for sustainable ag, for different types of conservation programs. So really a lot there to dig into, and really glad that the legislature was able to get that money out the door in the first year, instead of, like I said, when it looked like the deal wasn't going to come together. The $10 billion is still going to be there. It wasn't, I guess, a lost opportunity, like I called it earlier, but a 1-year delay for money that the voters have already approved, and really has a fairly slight effect on the general fund. And one thing specifically that Angie's been working on, that I've been able to work on with her a little bit, is about technical assistance for these Prop 4 funds. There's no specific mention in the budget of technical assistance, but the bond, no money specifically set aside by the legislature for it, but the bond authorizes up to 10% of all the funds to be available for technical assistance, which is really an extraordinary amount of money, and has the potential to do a lot of good in communities around the state, building up capacity, helping people, whether it's local governments, whether it's tribes, whether it's nonprofits, with pre-deployment work, pre-project work. That's still up to the individual agencies and departments that are the responsible agencies for distributing the funds. And so we're going to keep working through, a lot of the money goes through Resources Agency, through Resources, through the Strategic Growth Council, to see if we can work to get that money available to folks in a way that will be as helpful as possible. So that work will continue. I think real quick, one deal that didn't come together, that I think some folks on this meeting will be interested in, and probably already know about, in the CEQA streamlining, the CEQA reform that passed earlier in the year, one type of project that was included in the CEQA streamlining was for advanced manufacturing. There was a lot of pushback against that because the definition is broad, and a lot of advanced manufacturing, a lot of it, not necessarily all of it, can have positive climate impacts in the long term, and in the worldwide sense, sometimes it has negative impacts locally. And so, sort of some of the types of impacts that CEQA was designed to identify and mitigate. And so there was a promise made at the time by leadership that the exemption would be narrowed to limit its impact on nearby communities and on the environment. However, that is the one major deal that did not come together. There was a lot of very vocal frustration in the Senate Budget Committee hearing in particular about that broken promise from the members, from a lot of groups that testified. Expect that to continue into next year. Senator Wiener, the chair of the Senate Budget Committee, was very clear that he put the blame on the Assembly for not either putting the time in to bring that together, or just not being able to come to an agreement. I think that Assembly would probably have a different version of events, but that is something that didn't happen, and I do think we'll continue to see work on that next year. Well, let's go to the next slide, which is about the cap and trade reauthorization. It's now called Cap and Invest, so we can all change our autocorrect. It's a clean authorization. There were some discussions about whether to sort of change the way the program worked, but in the end, it was essentially just a reauthorization for another 15 years of Cap and Invest. The two bills that authorized it, AB 1207 by Assemblymember Jackie Irwin, that really goes over the the cap and auction revenue part of it, and then AB 840, or SB 840, sorry, typo on the slide, SB 840 by Senator Limon, that outlines essentially the greenhouse gas reduction fund and how the revenues will be used. On the whole, it was mostly unchanged. There were a lot of proposals going around. One of the reasons this deal almost didn't come together is at one point the Senate and the Assembly were pretty far apart. Some of the negotiators in the Senate wanted some pretty substantial changes to some of the parts of the program. But in the end, the continuous appropriations remain the same. These are the dollars that are spent every year without having to go through the budget. But I think if we go to the next slide where some of the GGRF spending is detailed, they changed, I think, the sort of the, not so much, if the revenues come in, if the auction revenues come in at about the target or about average, which is about $4 billion a year, then the funding remains the same. But the way that the downside risk is allocated is a little bit different. And so the very first thing that gets funded is the SRA fee backfill. Some of you maybe remember the state responsibility area fees that were put on a lot of rural residents. Remember how long ago? 15 years ago. And then the backfill for the CAPFA, the Advanced Energy and Transportation sales tax break for some types of advanced manufacturing, backfilling the general fund for that. And then there's a newly created Climate Bureau in the Office of Legislative Counsel that's funded through GGRF. And then the second thing off the top, or almost the top at this point, are the $1 billion for high-speed rail and the $1 billion of annual legislative appropriations. That's the non-continuous appropriation. That's the $1 billion that the legislature can choose what the money goes to each and every year. They already have some legislative intent that was adopted, either in the budget that passed at the end of session, the budget bill junior, as we call it, or the regular, the normal budget bill that passed in the summer, to use some of that money in next year for transit passes, to rebuild Topanga Canyon, and for the UC Climate Research Center, as well as some work around the scoping plan related to corporate supply chain and how much emissions are accrued to those. But the legislature also said that, in this year, they're using a fair amount of that legislative appropriation money to backfill CAL FIRE because there was a budget deficit. And really, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, Cap and Invest, when we think of it as a fee, when we think of it for emissions, it's really just a tax, and the legislature can use the money for anything they want because tax revenue, the use of it is unlimited or not restricted, I should say. And so in the budget that passed in the summer, the legislature expressed their intent in negotiations with the governor to use a fair amount of that money in budget year +1, 26-27, and the 2 following budget years, if we're projected to be in a deficit, which at the time we very much were. But that's all just legislative intent. The legislature cannot bind a future legislature, and they can change their mind about that next year. So we'll see what happens. And then after those, the first about $2.25 billion comes off the top, then you get to the continuous appropriations. This is where you have the Safer Drinking Water Program, the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities funding, a number of couple of different transit programs, a little bit of money to CAL FIRE for vegetation reduction and controlled burns, and then also the community air protection programs. But if the auction revenues don't total $4 billion, then all of those programs are reduced proportionately. That's where the money comes from if auction revenues don't meet their targets. And if there's extra money, then the legislature gets to decide where it goes. Let's move on to the next slide. So the energy puzzle, as it was called, included the cap and trade, cap and invest reauthorization. Sorry, I haven't fixed my autocorrect yet in my brain. The cap and invest. It included the GGRF. It also had AB 825, which I know was very controversial. I think the reason this was the energy puzzle is because they had to fit the different pieces together so that all of them could pass, right? There were detractors and supporters of all of these, and everybody, I think, sort of had to hold their nose to vote for it to get these through. So they were all put together as a package. So that's the sort of Western states, regional energy markets. You have the bill that allows Kern County to for more oil wells to be permitted in Kern County, making it easier to permit them, I guess, technically. Suspending the summer gas blend requirement, things like that. The investor-owned utility wildfire fund and reauthorizing and extending that, and then making a few changes to the community air protection program. Which includes codifying the Bureau of Environmental Justice within the Department of Justice. I think they were already doing a lot of that work, but it sort of made it more formal. And I think I'm at the end of my time, but I think I only have one more slide, which just goes over a few bills that might be of interest. In addition to the ones we talked about, there's AB 39 was the big one. That's the one that requires cities and counties over 75,000 to plan for equitable charging, making sure to do it in a way that takes into account disadvantaged communities. A few other bills there. I think the AB 1280 has the potential to have a lot of impact, authorizing the iBank and the Energy Commission to finance thermal energy storage projects. We'll see how those go. A couple of bills relating to trying to make sure that lithium ion and other battery storage systems are safer. Thought it was kind of interesting that SB 787 was vetoed. I haven't read that veto message yet, but assume it's just a cost issue. I think that's the last substantive slide. Happy to take any questions, of course. Oh, and there will be a new pro tem. Senator Lamone has been voted the new pro tem. She'll take over in about a month. She's, I think, generally known as somebody who has been pretty keyed in on environmental issues. However, at the same time, she will rely quite a bit on the moderate Democrats to retain her position. And I think if there's one big lesson overall from this legislative session, it's that the moderate Democrats are ascendant. They exercise a significantly more influence this legislative year than they have in the past several years, at least the past couple of years. And I think there were a lot of ways where that was evident. Not necessarily, they're not all necessarily moderate on environmental issues. Some are moderate on labor issues. Some are moderate on, tax issues. But I think that was the big lesson. Anyway, I think I went a couple of minutes over, but hopefully there was some helpful information, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Isn't he the best? Every time I have a question, I'm like, what does it mean? What is happening now? He seems to always know. So we appreciate you being here. And some good news there, right? So just to contextualize a little bit, we could have not had any Prop 4 allocation. We got quite a bit, a third of it. There will be some opportunity for technical assistance. Like Jeff said, some of us really want to see some of those technical assistance dollars get to folks like you on the ground, offering subject matter expertise and trusted organizational support in your communities. So that's part of what Jeff was talking about. That's something I've been talking about with folks. GGRF, thank goodness, right? We have now till 2045 to look forward to at least some auction revenue dollars pouring in to support climate efforts here in California. So some good news. And then what I want to do here is take more questions from folks. So you guys have dropped a few in the chat. I want you to drop more if you have them, or just raise your hand and we can have this last piece here be discussion based. There's folks here asking for your spreadsheet, Jeff, and I know you kind of are working on one. They would love to see, I think, both Prop 4 and GDRF allocations kind of split out for them. Where is it all going? Is that something that you're planning to share?
We're happy to share it. It's we don't really have a place on our website where we can upload things, but I don't know if either folks can email me for it, or Angie, I can share it with you. I know I sent you an earlier version. We haven't made a ton of changes to it, but I think just a couple of formatting things. Maybe folks can get it from you, or but we can get that maybe to you, Angie, later today, and you can share it with folks, or people can email me, and happy to send it along.
We always send an email after this meeting, so I'll have the recording and all the materials, and we can incorporate that in, so we can make sure we share it with everybody registered.
Great.
Thank you. All right, so there's more questions here. Let me get through them. So there's one here that's kind of detailed. May you elaborate on the 225.7 million for power plant site and transmission line? I don't know if you know more about this, Jeff, but it's a small amount for a huge capacity and fiendishly complex. So what impact on what aspect? Do you know more about this, or is this something we have to dig into?
I am going to, well, what I know about it is mostly what's just printed in the budget bill, the last version, which was SB 105. There's specifically from that money, there's about $43 million that's explicitly for infrastructure improvements for the offshore wind waterfront facility improvement program. If I remember right, maybe another chunk of that money is also for offshore wind specifically. But we can, yeah, I mean, it's a good chunk of the money that's going out through CEC. And there is a big focus on offshore wind. So that, that's not money that's sort of generally available, because there are, as I understand it, two places that are hoping to do the offshore wind, obviously up in Eureka. And I think I heard folks down in Long Beach area were also hoping to get a project out in the water.
Okay, thank you. There's questions about whether or not Prop 4 funding is one time, and I think the answer is yes, but is there more you would like to say on that?
Yeah, I mean, all one time in that it's just bond funds. So a fair amount of, I see the question now, for a fair amount of it will go to infrastructure. That's not necessarily the case. Sometimes it's just money that we make available one time. We, the state, make available to fund projects that we couldn't otherwise fund. Infrastructure is sort of I guess from a good government finance perspective, usually when you use it on things that have a long-term impact. But I think when it comes to resources, the idea is that that's generally the case. It's also partly just a way to give money to folks that we otherwise wouldn't have. And frankly, a way for the people who are making decisions now to lock up funding for what they think the money should go to. Because obviously we'll be paying down the debt on these bonds for the next about 30 years.
I don't know if we're hearing murmurs about, a subsequent bond to follow this one.
Well, I mean, right now, I think if I had to guess, I'd say there will be bonds on next year's ballot. We're very likely to see a housing bond, probably a large one, maybe possibly even 20 billion, maybe only 10. It's 10 right now in the legislature. It exists in the legislature right now. But I think generally, I wouldn't be surprised if we see another education bond either in 2026 or 28. As these funds run out, then the momentum starts to build for a new one. But I don't think we'll see a new one until a lot of these funds have been spent down.
Okay, and then Jody chimed in here to add, just talking about that's particularly challenging when we have these one-time funds and rather than recurring dollars to really follow us through these difficult infrastructure projects that have multiple phases. Totally agree. Thanks for raising that, Jody. There's a question here about water. So do you know what remaining allocation given to DWR, Department of Water Resources, and Office of Safety of Dams? They were originally slated for 480 million. Wondered what they ended up with. Do you know that?
There is through DWR, there's about a $250 million, $228,200,000 for dam safety and climate resilience local assistance program. And that is a competitive grant program for dam safety and reservoir operations.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. You knew. All right. So Tessa, I am hoping you will also unmute because I wanted to get your feedback on AB 825 if you had more context to add, but you're also asking, do you believe that the energy bill puzzle will actually lead to more bill affordability?
I don't have opinions. I just report the news. I think that
well, that's what they've been saying. I mean, they're
yeah,
touting that this is, with public, there's going to be more public financing of infrastructure systems and perhaps some capping of in the wildfire fund, rebuilding the wildfire fund. I believe that some of the investor-owned utility profits to shareholders need to contribute to that, which might reduce ratepayer.
That was one piece that I think I skipped over, that it was in one of the sub bullets there for one of those bills. Is I think So the IOUs get a guaranteed rate of return on infrastructure. And so as they've been undergrounding lines, that counts as infrastructure spending. And so they get a guaranteed rate of return on it. One of the things in the bill is I think the number is 6 billion, do 6 billion of like, fire resilient infrastructure that they cannot build into the rate structure for the guaranteed rate of return. I'm sorry if I got the detail on that a little bit wrong, but I believe that's what, so for that part, yeah, theoretically there's a reduction, or at least a slower rate of increase on bills, because that's 6 billion that they can't tack on the guaranteed profit. Certainly the affordability, the watchwords for the legislature coming into this legislative session, will opening up more oil wells in Kern County help keep the cost of gas down? It's pretty interesting to see how it was a 180 from the end of last session, right? When the governor got his price spike commission, sorry, I don't know its real name, passed and, put out press releases every other day, excoriating the fossil fuel industry. And then the session this year, they were all, earnestly asking the refinery companies what they could do to keep them in the state. It was a really striking turnaround. Whether it actually reduces, or increases affordability, frankly, I think it'll be hard to tell in the future too, because does it reduce bills, or does it reduce the rate of increase of bills, right? If it's the latter, bills are still going up. But I think it's a tough puzzle. And I frankly, I'd be interested in your thoughts on it. One thing it doesn't do, I think that we all can agree on, is it doesn't give consumers, grants for switching from gas to electric, or energizing their home, or making their homes, helping low-income residents make their homes more energy efficient, right? Those are the things that we know for the people that I think, if I remember it, you're from SoCal REN. The REN does a lot of good work in those areas. But I'd be interested in your opinion on that.
Well, and I'm not going to proclaim to be an expert here, but I will say that I think one of the answers, as you pointed to, would be to increase energy efficiency for all. If we really want affordability, that would be one of the answers. But I think what we faced with 825, of course, was no longer at the end, the threat was removed and the bill completely transformed. So it's, it had been, as everybody knows, there was going to be a task force convened that would determine whether energy efficiency and other public purpose programs were cost effective and productive, and they could determine all sorts of things. If they didn't like a program for whatever reason, they could eliminate it. And that was the concern. And so that was eliminated entirely. So we kind of, dodged the bullet. And I think the key is what they passed actually going to cut people's bills? Because if not, then we'll be facing this threat going forward. And I think, as you said, we don't know necessarily.
Thank you, Tessa. Yeah, appreciate that context. So I'm going to wrap us here for now, because we have one more slide to get through, then we're going to close our formal hour, and then we go into bonus breakouts. There's a little bit of overtime opportunity there. So some of this can continue on there, or you can bring up other topics. First, I want to say thank you so much to Jeff, and for that really good engaged conversation, everybody. More to talk about there, but Jeff's such a good resource. Thank you. And you're getting claps. I love the claps. Whoever made that function is awesome. All right, I wanted to tell you just a little bit, for those of you that are local government representatives, you maybe already listed or registered on our state and local energy and climate coordination meetings. Our next one is on Thursday. I keep getting it wrong. You may have seen I had to send a correction. It's on the 16th at 3 p.m. If you aren't already on our list and you are a local government representative of some kind, you can join us. We would love it. We have about 400 people registered. And so this is our agenda. And just, I wanted to raise up the big point of this meeting. We have some really good updates coming from various agencies and locals on this roundtable update piece that I think will be interesting for you. But the main meat of the day will be how we've taken the first 2.5 years of SLEEK And we're working to compile what we have learned about your priorities, your barriers, your ideas and solutions, and your practices, and amplifying those up at a higher level. I just had the chance this week to last week to go present to the Strategic Growth Council on how we are starting to compile all this information. So we want to run it by you all and get your input on how it's coming together, and we're continuously adding to it. It's an iterative, dynamic process. We're going to show you what our website's starting to shake up to look like, and we want it to resonate with you. We want to make sure you feel like your input has been heard and captured, and that we have opportunities to raise that up in places that will really matter. So join us for that conversation if you can. We're excited to share it with you. Okay, last slide is just a big thank you so much for being here again with us every month, and we will be on the next slide. Our next month's meeting will be actually moving, so you'll see an update because it's Veterans Day on November 11th. So we're moving it back a week to November 18th. I know we're touching real close to holidays then, but that's what we'll be doing. And I have some ideas for topics, but you can always send me a topic if you want to hear about something specific, or if you want to share something, please do reach out to me anytime. With that, thanks again to our speakers and all of our participants. We're going to roll ourselves now over into our bonus breakout, or a little bit more of an informal time if you have to go. We'll see you again soon. But here's what we like to do normally in our bonus breakout. It's an informal space for discussion among everybody here. So you can offer an announcement, success story, if you know of an opportunity you want to share with folks. Maybe you need some information, collaborators, or advice on something. You might suggest a topic or speaker for future Learn, or really anything on your mind. And also we can just go into overtime, because I know there's some remaining questions that are still in the chat on the last topic on legislative updates. So I'm going to leave open space for anybody who wants to raise something, and then we'll go back to the questions that are left in the chat.